Welcome back. I'm Connie Sokol, your host, and I am absolutely delighted to have our guest today to be with us for you to get the ins and outs, the skinnies, the how-tos on a writer's journey, but from some different lenses of how it was for her growing up, how it was for her in the middle, the messy middle, and then how it is for her now having incredible stellar success. It is Jennifer Nielsen today, New York Times bestselling author. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Oh, thanks, Connie. I'm thrilled to be here.
She is a love, and I will give you the official bio. And I have to chuckle because I am so blessed to be able to interview a lot of different people. And what she sends me for her bio, 3 sentences. Okay. I have people who send me 3 pages. Okay. 3 sentences. So this is what she sends me. She lives in northern Utah with her family. And yeah, she's a New York Times bestselling author of like several fantasy and historical novels for young readers. And she loves old books and great movies and quiet walks in the mountains, probably long walks in the rain, maybe pina coladas. We don't know. But what I'm saying is she gives me nothing, okay, of the most amazing stuff that she is in the background. And that is Jennifer. I have been privileged to have some different opportunities to be with her, connect with her as a writer, as a friend. We've been at writing conference where we both spoke, and she was at one that I went to just so I could see her. And the things that I want to share with you as far as a bio goes, because this is more her style, is in a more natural way, that just endear me to her are: one, I remember being at a Storymakers conference, huge writing conference that I've mentioned before on the Western Coast for writers. And she's giving this presentation that is the most fabulous. I can't take notes fast enough. I've got insights going, just exploding in my head. And then she pops up the slide and it's got a Google pie chart. And so she's talking about the stuff on the pie chart. And then she pauses and she goes, "That isn't a real pie chart to what I'm talking about, but I just couldn't find one that had the stuff I wanted. So I just put that on there." We roared. Like everybody in the audience was like, I love her. Like I could hang with her. Okay. So that's the kind of person she is. And on a more one-on-one level, I remember taking my son to go get one of her books to get it signed for him. And we waited in the line, and it was the King's English Bookstore in Salt Lake. And there was a huge line out the door. And I'm watching her as we're getting closer and closer and closer. And I kid you not, every single child that passed by her face, that came to her table, she treated as if they were the only person that mattered in the world. She asked a question, she listened to the answer, and she was completely present and engaged with that person. And I think that more than anything tells you the background of Jennifer Nielsen and one of the keys to her success. She is present, she is there, she is all in, and she is connected to people when she is with them. So thank you. I'm probably embarrassing the heck out of her right now, but that's a friend's job, right? Okay, so let's jump in, because I love on your website, it's jennifernielsen.com. I love on your website, the bio is a lot more juicy on there. I love that you talk about writing stories when you were young. And anyone who's listening, who has a dream, who wants to fulfill their purpose, whether it's writing or not, you can liken it to this, but especially writers can relate to this. You start out young, you have these ideas that are just exploding in your mind, right? And I love the fact that you started writing these stories, and you even wrote one that required that you even call a locksmith to get interesting details and facts on being able to how you pick a lock, right? And what happened with that?
The locksmith thing, I need to do the prelude for it, which is it was my first real attempt to write. Like, and by the way, thank you for that incredible introduction. That is better than I deserve. But it was my first real attempt, like, to be a serious author. I'm 12. And I just wanted to be taken seriously, like this big dream, all these ideas in my head. I was ready to dive in. And so, yeah, in the writing, the character is locked and I don't know how to pick a lock. And so, yeah, I call the locksmith. And to me, in my 12-year-old brain, this is a completely logical thing to do. It was straight up writer's research. And I get on the phone and the locksmith gets angry. And he says, "How old are you?" And he said, "You hang up this phone. You go tell your mother what you're trying to do." And I screamed into the phone, "Ah!" And I hung up the phone and I ran away and hid. And eventually I left my hiding place. But I never wrote another word on that story.
No.
I still have it today. I quit. And not only quit the story, I quit writing for a really long time because I felt like this is my dream. And if it was a real dream, if it was really possible for me to succeed, that locksmith would have taken me seriously. In hindsight, it was such a stupid decision to let somebody I didn't even know have control over this dream that I had. But yeah, at the time I quit for a long time.
Oh my gosh. And that is such a perfect visual aid of what happens to all of us in pursuing our purpose or a dream. And especially for writers, I think that that vulnerable part of yourself is just so yearning for validation because it's such a new bud that's opening, right? And any kind of eyebrow raise or the least, kind of response that really does matter. And I love the fact that you were able to put that into perspective along the way and still move forward and still do more stories. So it seems like as I was reading through that and the things that you've mentioned to me in conversation, that you have done that. You have written stories and then you put them aside. And then you've written stories and you put them aside. Sometimes people get this idea, New York Times bestselling author, you sat down, it came from your brain to the pen, right? It's just a fluid process. So take us through some of the challenges that you dealt with of validating yourself as a writer, coming off of that experience. How did you come to a place of validating yourself as a writer and then actually taking the step to move forward?
In regard to, I think every single one of us, I mean, whatever it is that our dream is, whatever it is that we feel like is inside of us, it has to start with us believing in ourselves before anybody else is going to believe in us first. You want to start a business, you want to, say, hey, I'm going to open an Etsy store, or you're like, I feel like I could be a really great cook, or I want to complete college, or whatever it is that we have. It has to start with us, because nobody is going to invest in you when you haven't invested in yourself. And so it is something where you have to like make it part of your identity. And we say, it's not, I like to cook, I am a cook. And we identify ourselves in that way. It's not that I like to draw, we say, I am an artist. And you don't have to say, I'm a good artist. You just own who you are. And so for me to own who I was, that I am a writer, was a really long time coming. That was scary. That was so scary.
What was the process? Because, there's all this advice of, okay, get with other people who are like-minded, get with other writers or singers or whatever, or go to these conferences or just start writing or things like that. What were some of those pivotal pieces for you, that those moments that you look back on and go, that helped me solidify that identity that I am a writer?
There was a few of them. I remember sitting and talking with my neighbor, and I had just finished this really awful story that is going to be buried with me because it's just a disaster. But I told her that I was going to be published one day, and she just laughed, and she's like, "Oh, that's good for you!" Like, isn't that?
Pat you on the head, yeah.
It was, and it was without even realizing what she did. It was such a kick. It was such a kick. And I went inside and I realized that I'm either going to accept the kick or I'm going to defy it. And I could only do one of the two. And I thought, if I accept that kick, she is going to be right. And it bothered me that I was, because of this locksmith thing, I wasn't giving my power to somebody else to be right about my dream. And so it had to be me. And then I remember I talked with a man who was a published author, and I told him that I wanted to be published one day, but I also wanted to hit the New York Times list. And he's like, maybe you'll be published. You're never going to hit the list. And it wasn't a personal thing at me. It was that doesn't happen to real people sort of thing. And I told him, no, I will hit the list. And I think about him often, and it wasn't anything negative to him. It was just his experience. And I remember something I had heard earlier in my life that I loved, and it just said, you never listen to the failures. You never do. Because the failures are going to tell you it's not possible. Because it wasn't possible for them, they're going to say isn't possible for you. And so you never listen to them. And so I made up my mind. I'm not listening to anybody who says, well, that was my dream too, and I didn't make it. And I only started listening to people who achieved their dreams. And then they were the ones who said, of course you can do it. And then that is what started to define it for me, of saying, okay, I can do this. Like, it might be years ahead, but I just stopped listening to the people who said you can't.
I love that. And I love that that was a conscious choice, a smart choice, a conscious choice to be able, I love you that how you said to choose who's going to be right about my dream. And I love that you had that sort of defiance feel, and that weaves such a thread into all your books. I love, how many times have you been on the New York Times bestselling list? This is an embarrassing question, I know, because you hate talking about this kind of stuff, but
Um, maybe 5 times.
I just want people listening to hear that, because this is not something that she would ever bring up on her own. So someone's telling her that's not going to happen. And she's now been on that list 5 times. She has historical fiction. She has several series, the Ascendant series and the Mark of the Thief and the Trader's Game. And now she's doing a multi-author series, or has been. I look at that and I think, had you stopped with someone else's not knowledgeable opinion, uninformed opinion of what your life and your dream and your purpose could be. How often do we do that? We give that power to somebody else who doesn't even know us or our trajectory, what our purpose path is. So I love that you did that. So let's just take it from there, that you like moved on, you started writing. I remember being in a presentation where you were talking about this one time, and I think it was The Apprentice that you had written. And then you had gotten a rejection or something, and you made yourself a cake. It was on your birthday. Can you tell us about that? That was another, it was a low point that you had to make a decision of what you were going to do. So take us to that point of where your writing was at, and then what this meant and what you did with it.
Yeah, that was my absolute just low point. I do need to say about the New York Times thing, my top selling title has never hit the list. And so I think it's important to realize, like, measures of success aren't always extrinsic, and they aren't always visual. That even though New York Times was one of my goals, there's so many different ways to define success. We have to be careful we don't get locked into saying, oh, this is my top selling title, but because it didn't hit the list, it wasn't a successful book. There are so many ways to define our success. We can't get locked into one view of it. But Apprentice.
You know what? I'm going to play off of that for just a half a second.
Yeah.
An important experience I had with you about that. You are so right. And that has guided me for years. Years ago, for those that are listening, I came to a place where I was offered a contract to write with this gal who is amazingly successful. She's making thousands and thousands and thousands every month. Very successful name. Asked me to be part of an anthology series she was doing with a lot of other writers. And it was guaranteed. It was a no-brainer. But I could not get peaceful about it. And I remember emailing you, feeling really moxie that I was emailing you about this question. And I remember that you sent back, and it's something that probably everybody shares now, and they don't know the original person who shared it. And it was Jen Nielsen, about likening. She said, Connie, liken your writing career to climbing a mountain. She said, you need to understand for yourself, what does the top of that mountain look like? What does success look like for you? Is it the title? Is it awards? Is it money? Is it best-selling status? What is it for you? And I had not considered that. And because you shared that with me, two important pieces that I took away from that was, you said, choose projects that will keep you climbing, not circling the base. People, write that down, because that has been like my bulletin board reminder to self whenever I'm making a decision. Is it keeping me climbing to the top of where I want to go, or is it making me circle the base, no matter how blingy it looks? And the second one was defining what that success looked like. And for me, I said, as long as I know I'm making a difference in the lives of women that I'm teaching, then it doesn't matter if it's a small plot in Galilee kind of thing, or if it's a big global thing. As long as I know that what I'm sharing is making a difference, then I feel satisfied. Now, I have other markers with that too, but that was the number one thing. And so thank you for compelling me to do that. What has been the marker for your success then? You had a lot of success, awards, best-selling. You've had the financial aspect. You've had all of these things, and yet you're also a mother and a wife and all of these things. What have been some of the key markers for your success? I know I'm segueing from what I originally asked you, but let's segue down here for a second.
No, that's good. There's an author out there named Jewel Parker Rhodes. She's a professor, African-American, extremely knowledgeable, a wonderful, wonderful writer for children. She says that writing is sacred. Writing for children, particularly. And it's because of the impact that the books have upon a developing child, that books change who we are, they change lives, they change focus. And she says that's a sacred responsibility and that we always must keep that in mind. And I love that so much. And she's such an amazing woman and just somebody I deeply admire. And I have adopted that the books I write occupy sacred space. And I don't mean that in a religious way. I mean that as I take very seriously the understanding that a child will pick up my book and it will have an impact on who they become. And so I never take that for granted. My markers have nothing to do with financial success, awards, list placement. I don't care about any of that. The only thing I care about is who picks up my book and what does it matter. And that, those markers are what keep me climbing.
I love that, because think back to the most impactful books that we've read, right? Have there been ones over your lifespan? Of course. I think back even to when I was reading Harriet the Spy when I was in elementary school, and I want to be a detective. And I was like fingerprinting my family with my watercolor paints, and I mean, you act it out. It becomes a part of you. It becomes a part of what can be and possibility. So you're exactly right. This sacred responsibility. And it's not just for writing, but for anything that we do, the lens that we look through and that we share with other people. I think it's so vital. Whenever I'm writing, I'm thinking, what if someone took this advice? What if someone followed the things that I'm having my characters do, or what I'm saying in my nonfiction? What would I'm responsible for that in a certain sense. Would I be okay being responsible for that, right? So I love that point that you bring in. I think that's the beauty of good writing. What are some books that have really touched your heart or influenced your writing as you've gone along?
I mean, everything. I mean, everything I read, everything I learn influences and impacts, and some of it is for the better, and some of it is what not to do. But everything, like if we are what we eat, right? We are as writers what we read, and we are a consumption of it. You talk about Harriet the Spy. For most of us, and not all of us, but if we are readers and we have a favorite book, we almost always, not always, but almost always, we discover it somewhere between the ages of 10 and 14. And it's because of what is happening developmentally to us at that age. That's why I write for that age, because the child absorbs the book differently than they will younger or older. The books that have influenced me most were discovered in those years. That's Wrinkle in Time. That was Meg, who I wanted to be strong and smart and not have to be like everybody else. And in an era where there weren't very many strong female protagonists, Meg, I just literally loved her. And I loved Bonnie in The Wolves of Willoughby Chase by Joan Aiken. I loved Turtle in The Westing Game for all of those same reasons. And it brought out for me that you talk about that defiance. Why did I have that? Meg and Turtle and all of these amazing characters. And I loved The Outsiders, the book itself. But the realization that this book, the #1 selling young adult book of all time, was written by a teenage girl. And that was a life changer for me.
I've never known that. I've read the book. I've never known that that's who wrote it. I mean, I know who writes it, but I didn't know it was a teenage girl.
It's the #1 selling young adult book of all time. It sold more copies than Harry Potter. And it is proof. S.E. Hinton is proof you can start from nowhere. And do it. And
now I feel like those threads of what you've read, this is such a beautiful woven tie-in, that what you've read and then your heroes, you write such a good teen boy voice. You have this great way of, some people can try it and it sounds like someone's trying. Where does that come from? The inspiration, besides these books that you've written, is it your own children? Is it phrases you hear? Or is it just a part of you that just relates to that? Because you love the youth and you can feel it. So where do you get the skill to connect with them on that level?
To connect with kids? I think all that you need to do is just love them for who they are as they are, and not just come to where they are. And when you do that, and they trust you enough to open up to you, they just reveal themselves as the most amazing young people. I just held a contest on my blog for super fans of the False Prince series. And it was just do whatever you want to show that you're a super fan. And what these kids produced literally blew my mind. It was unreal what they did. And it was because I said, just be you. Just be you. I'm not putting a qualifier. And if we trust our young people, they will floor us every single time.
Okay, give us a couple of examples. You can't dangle that carrot and then not let us bite. What were some of the things that they did that were?
Oh, there were two 14-year-olds who wrote an original song called "I'm Like Ascending," because it's the Ascendant series. And then one of the girls kind of did this. She had written a preamble to it, and then the second girl sung with original guitar music. And then they did original filming. They made a music video for this, and it's beautiful. And I mean, you can see it. It's on my blog. It's just the finalists. It is absolutely stunning. There's a girl who did a fan fiction piece for the novel that is longer than anything I've written. It's like 115,000 words. And she created this. There were 4 fourth graders who wrote 6 episodes, if it was a TV series, and then they created the score to it. 4th graders. All right. And you know what? It's actually like, right. There were 2 girls who created a board game, and it looks like something you'd buy in the store. And then they created a video showing the gameplay. And this is just the power of young people let loose. And how could I not love and respect that and go, hey, you know what? You are tomorrow. And I trust you that you are going to produce a better tomorrow than I can possibly envision.
Ah, that's fantastic. And that is in your writing. There is that absolute feel of trust and problem solving and using what you've got and the resources that you have and your wit and your intelligence and this lovely humor that's just, it's just subtle and fun and clear and pointed. It's just beautiful. I love that you have been able to find your way and your style. And I want to circle back to, you know, say you've been writing, you've been doing, but you hit that low back to the cake experience, because this is what happens when we want to follow and pursue our purpose and fulfill it. We get excited. It's that first energy and adrenaline, and we feel the passion. We feel the call of it. And then we have some good things that happen. Then we have hard things that happen. And then we get to a bottom of the barrel experience of, it's a switch point in the road. Am I going to keep going down this road? Or am I going to do a different path, even a safe path, right? What was your experience with that?
All right. So it's important to know when I started writing. So I wrote a manuscript, talked to the lady on my lawn. It was terrible. That one was just to see if I could write a novel. And then I started writing to try to get published. And I wrote something and it was awful. It's going to be buried with me. It's number 2. And I wrote number 3 that's awful and going to be buried with me, but I'm submitting them. I'm trying to get published. And then I wrote number 4 that it wasn't the worst thing I've ever done, but it wasn't publishable. And then we get to number 5, which is Apprentice to a Madman. It was my first attempt at writing for young people. And I thought it was the best. I thought like every kid's going to buy 15 copies because it's just going to be that cool. And I don't know why you need 15 copies of one book. It was just that cool. And I querying this project. All right. So a query is a 1-page letter and you say, hey, you know, to an editor or to an agent, are you interested in seeing more? And so I started querying. And so this, I'm going to show you. This is one of my actual query letters right here. This is my rejection. So I didn't even get a rejection letter. I got a rejection scribble. That's okay. Right? Because I am in this, you know, I'm about the defiance and I'm going to keep going. So down here, this is my query. This is the rejection. This whole thing is a query, but at least it's on their letterhead. So I was making progress. And when we get to all of the queries, these.
And those are all rejections? Every
single one of them.
Oh, and for those that are just listening, it's like an inch thick. I mean, it's at least, yeah.
It's formidable. And this even, Connie, this isn't all that I received. This is when I started saving them. This is when I thought, you know what, one day I want to be able to show people that you say you're trying and you're failing and you're trying and you're failing and failing and failing. I get it. I get it. Literally, by the time you take my 5 manuscripts, I think it's safe to assume I am literally one of the greatest failures anyone might ever meet. But see, I have no problem with that, because I don't have a problem with failing, because all that failing is another opportunity to get better and try again. And so I would get better and I would try again and again and again. But I did hit a low point on this one, because I finally ran out of people to query. Like, I'd done the doorman to the driver for the editor, and when that query's rejected, I'm out. So I knew there was this one publisher who pretty much takes anybody. And it wasn't the way I wanted to break into the industry, but at least I would be in, and I sent off a query to that publisher. So it's Publisher X. And so we fast forward a couple of months, and now it's my birthday. And on the morning of my birthday, I get a call from a friend who says, hey, on my very first manuscript, my very first query, I sent it to Publisher X, and I just got an acceptance. Isn't that awesome? And I was like, oh, yeah, that's great. I just hate you, because it was her first manuscript, first query, and she was breaking in. And I thought, okay, at least I know that Publisher X is sending out their letters. And so I went out there, and there, sure enough, in the post box was my letter from Publisher X. And I thought, well, at least we can get in at the same time. At least, I mean, it would have been great to be first. At least we're in at the same time. And I opened it up, and there was my rejection from the publisher who pretty much takes everybody, on my birthday and after that phone call. And so, yeah, you talk about the birthday cake, and, I mean, that was a bad birthday. You can't eat enough to make that feel better. And so for me, it was such a low point when I realized I'm never going to publish this. And I have to face the reality that I might never publish at all. I have to face the possibility that I have no talent, I have no future as a writer, and that I've been fooling myself all this time. I have to address that. And so I knew from that point forward, I was going to have to make a decision, and it was only going to be one of two things. And decision one is going to be to admit I have no talent and quit. And I knew I had to just address that directly, but in order to come up to the second conclusion, which is I will never fail at this again. And so I said, I'm going to throw out everything that I think I know about writing. I'm going to literally start over from scratch, and I'm going to write one more manuscript. And this is in, or it will be proof I have no talent, because I'm starting from nothing. And starting from nothing is the one thing I had to do. That one, where I started over. That's what got me my agent. It's what got me into this profession. It's not that I've never had failures. I have plenty. But I have never received a rejection letter from that time forward.
Oh, that is fantastic. And I love that you don't have a problem with failure. You just had to face the reality and say, which path am I going to go down? And it wasn't, I'm not ever going to write again kind of a thing of, okay, that's it. It was, am I going to be all in and do what needs to happen for this to be successful? Maybe change the way that I think I have to go about this in order to make it work. And that, out of any self-development book guru you want to listen to, that's what they talk about. They talk about getting over yourself and doing what it's going to take for you to be successful, that will be aligned with what you ultimately want to have happen. That is just stunning. And then to see the success from that, there are different ways. There are the one-time, one-hit wonders. And then there's, I remember you telling me a long time ago that it is so good when it takes a while to be successful, because you're really working your craft. You're learning how to replicate whatever success you're going to do down in the future. And that has stayed with me also, because it is a building and a scaffolding of trying to help you not just do a one-time success, but to keep replicating it and building on it and becoming more. For those that are, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say, the idea is that you can't keep what you haven't earned. And if success is handed to us too quickly, we can't hold on to it because we don't know how we got it. And so, we need the work, we need the failure, we need to fall down, because if you don't fall down, how will you ever learn to push yourself back up? And that's just the reality. And so those failing experiences, those aren't shortfalls. those are stepping stones forward. And I don't like that I had to go through the failure stage, but I wouldn't be here today still in this business if I had not.
I absolutely agree. And I think that's another tribute to your lasting success, that the series that you produce, the things that you do, they are such solid content. Um, they're, they're just such quality. And I agree. I don't know that you could have had that had it been just working with that original tool set. You had this advanced tool set that you've had to gain over the years, and that respect for the writing. And I love that that's been your path. Tell us, we have a couple more minutes left, if you would. Tell us if there's something that you're thinking in your mind, oh, I wish I would have known back then when I was writing and trying and had this driver in me that I wanted to fulfill this purpose. Was there something that you wanted to share with listeners that you'd be like, you know what? This saw me through. This was such a keeper thing, a piece of wisdom, a pearl, of great price, whatever. But this really was a solid thing for me to keep me focused in the right way. Is there anything that comes to mind for you?
Yeah, I would just say a couple of things. I would say, number one, that it's okay if everybody's not on board with your dream. That somebody can love you and still not get your dream, or somebody can, they can totally have your back and be your best ever friend, but they just don't have the same vision as you. And that's okay. It's okay if for a while you are walking alone and managing this one alone. Other people will come on board. They will see it. They will see it, but you don't have to say, if you love me, you are going to buy into my dream right now. Like, just sometimes just keep going. And the way that you do that, Connie, you mentioned about the climb. It really is about that. You set your eye on your summit, whatever your summit is, and you just keep yourself focused on that summit. Because when you fall down, and you're going to fall and you're going to scrape your knees and it's going to hurt, you keep your eye on that summit, because that makes you get up and keep climbing. And there are 1,000 different diversions and roads you might take. So if the road doesn't lead to your summit, even if it's great, it's not your road.
Love that. And your analogy of that, she has an entire talk that I would highly recommend that you book her for, because it's an entire talk around this and gathering your climbing team and all of that. And the thought that she shared with me long ago about this, it triggered another question for me of, when I get to the top of that summit, who do I want to be and who do I want to be with? And those two pieces have been such a driver for me, because we can be knocking old ladies and walkers over to get to our summit, right? But it doesn't make us a very good person when we get there. And I think that's what a great example you are, is of being able to follow and pursue this dream, this driver, this calling almost that you feel you're to do, and influence the youth in the way that you do, in such a good, genuinely positive way, even though you're showing how they're dealing with hard things, that you are that example. You have become a better person doing the very thing you're doing and helping others become better. And I can't think of a better definition of success than that. It's just beautiful and fulfilling. I love the things that you have shared with us. Was there something else that you wanted to share? I know I keep kind of playing off of what you're sharing, because it's just this beautiful flow back and forth. I'm just like, oh, this infinity loop, I'm loving it. Is there anything else that that you wanted to share that I haven't let you?
No, but I just love the way that you ended it. That's right. Who are you at the end when you stand on your summit? And so choose your goal carefully. Choose your goal carefully, because at the end of the day, it's going to be the people in our lives. There's nothing of financial success and awards and notability. At the end of the day, the most important job I have is mom. And so in climbing, I always keep in mind, that I've got my priorities, and that is God and family.
Love. And you live that. In fact, one time we were talking, and I can't remember what the big award was or something. I know you've had all these things in the papers and stuff like that, but something had come up, and somehow it was being shared right there with your kids. And they were like, it's great. What's for dinner? Right? Like, they're just keeping you humble and keeping you grounded. And I love that. And again, that comes out in your writing, that comes out in who you are when you're at book signings and the kind of person that you are. In fact, one last thing I want to share that goes along with that. I'm so embarrassing this woman today. I'm so sorry. But I remember I was at a book signing with her and I was near the back, and there was another gal that was near the back, and she was like the front runner out there. You know, the person's going to entice people in the door. And she had us be able to move up front. And I will never forget that. She just was so gracious, just very kind and aware of others. People are going to be wanting to connect with you like crazy, like I have wanted to. Where's the best way to reach you?
Everything goes through my website, so you can contact me through my website. You can learn more about me at my website. So that's just jennielsen.com, and I'll always respond. It's me who responds, and so I will see all of that.
And that is so her. Like even getting the bios and stuff, it's not an assistant. It's she's texting me, and it's just that personal touch. For those that have missed this cast and you're just hopping on right now and you want to get the juices, I want to recap just a couple of things that she shared. Please go back and re-listen. It's just fantastic. But first and foremost, believe in yourself and get the identity of that purpose. Not that you like to write, that you like to cook, you like to be a photographer, that you are a writer, you are a photographer, you are a school aide that helps with autistic children. That's who you are, and is part of your identity. I love that she said, who do you want to be right about your dreams? So not listening to the failures. And I love that she says writing is a sacred responsibility. It's a sacred space, and everything that we do to share a message, whatever that looks like for you out there, it is a sacred space. And that means we're entitled to sacred help if we want that, to be able to share that message. I love that she said she doesn't have a problem with failure, but being able to face the realities and doing what needs to happen in order to make the success that you're looking for. And then I love that she said it's okay that not everybody's on board with your dream. And then the analogy of climbing that mountain, set your eye on the summit. Gives me goosebumps. Jennifer, what a beautiful podcast interview. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us today.
Thank you, Connie. What a great service you do for your listeners. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And for more on Jennifer Nielsen, Jen Nielsen, IELSEN.com. Check out everything she does. It's so, so good. And if you want more of these podcasts, subscribe and rate below. And remember, for anything from my stuff on helping you live a more purposeful, organized, and joyful life, go check out ConnieSokol.com and join us next time to help you take your next step to living your purpose-filled life.
Thank you.